So yeah, that's the idea. The idea is to find ways in which you could put the interest that you would be paying to someone else back in your pocket, and do this without spending any more money or living any differently than we are now. A lot of times we do things according to the way the roadmap has been laid out for us, especially when it comes to paying your mortgage. I mean, it's okay. What's that mortgage payment? 1,000 a month? Okay, I'll subscribe to that and pay that every month. How do we do it? Well, just log into the site and set yourself up, register, hook up your bank, and pay your $1,000 a month. Well, it's almost like it's a trap in a way, right? There's no one
Yeah.
there that's telling you, hey, Lowell, there's another way to do this. Go over to this
Right.
link, to the link over here to the right, and set yourself up for a biweekly payment, or set yourself up for making a lump sum payment, right? Or
Right.
use a roundup. Those was three of the methods that we discussed last week, right? Was
Right.
how much would it help you if you made a lump sum payment versus paying a biweekly payment versus rounding up, or
Right.
even a combination of all three? And those factors aren't anything that you could do when you sign on to a lender's website. It just doesn't exist. So
Right.
you need to either find a way to perform the calculations yourself, or come to someone like me, perhaps, or another financial planner or advisor who has some software that could help you determine what the best method would be. Now, here's the the $1 million question that goes to you, Lowell. Out of all three methods, lump sum, biweekly, and rounding up, which one is the best method to use? Do you remember from
I
last week?
don't I don't remember from last week, but I'm going to take a stab at it and say lump sum.
I think you're right. I think lump sum gives the edge, and it does only because of the time value of money
Hmm.
going to work for you sooner and paying off a larger amount of interest. But then
Right.
again, a lot of people don't have the ability to pay lump sum.
Right.
We talked about the taxation, IRS taxes, using that tax return as a means to pay the lump sum. We talked about
Hmm.
whether that makes more sense or not to do that. Or should you come home with the money before instead of waiting for a tax return, come home with more money in your pocket through the year? And we determined that that makes more sense as long as you're disciplined and you know what to do with that money. And some of it could be
Yeah.
used to help you offset these interest costs and pay that mortgage down. But whether we go with any one of those three or four methods, we remember that any of those methods that we choose alone are better than doing nothing,
Nothing.
right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether we get caught up in, well, which one should it be? I don't think I could do that or whatever. It's better than doing nothing, and that's the default,
Do
is doing nothing,
do
and that's exactly
yeah.
what they want us to do, nothing.
Right. So basically, just do something. Do something to
Do
help yourself get ahead.
that's right, that's right,
Yeah.
and which is why I'm wearing my Friday goat cap, if you see that here. Okay, before you start to go out on a limb and try to figure out what that stands for, I'll tell you. It really means exactly what you said. Go out and try, right? Go out and
Okay.
try. Take the knowledge that you just got, take the information and use it, right?
Yeah.
So there's an old expression, God bless those who 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 get advice, who give advice and get advice.
Yeah.
But God bless those 10,000 fold, the person that takes that advice and actually uses it. So that's a little bit why I'm wearing the goat cap, to remember that we all need to go out and use the information and try it, right? Try it for yourself,
Right.
share it with someone else, test it and
Right.
see. Okay, so welcome, Nav. We have four. We'll kick it off. 25 registered. They're probably still sleeping. I don't know. Was there a time change? Maybe. But they may
Nope.
they may kick in. It's so surprising that people show up for their first date late. You always want to make the best impression. But before we kick it off, we're going to start with chapter 4. We just reviewed what we learned last week for the first couple of chapters, and this is being recorded. So if there's an issue with that, I suggest you sign off. But just get back to me, and I'll send you the recording. What I'd like to do is just share a little of who I am, what I offer, and what we do. We're part of the Real Estate Wealth Academy, Lowell and I here, that you see on your screen, which is delivering and putting together a whole host of different coursework educational for real estate agents so that they can learn more about the things that they don't normally do on a daily basis that might help them actually do more real estate business by being more knowledgeable in certain areas, financially speaking. And so we put together some courses and some programs. I'd like to go through that a little bit for you now, if I can. And let's see. I just want to share my screen. This way we're able to see it.
You had it shared. It was now unshared.
Oh, I did?
Yep.
Okay, so I had it shared. Let's see. There it is. Okay. Yeah. So this in particular here that you see is an estate planning opportunity for realtors to get involved with. It's a turnkey system that provides clients or yourself with the tools that you need to be successful in discussing estate planning. Not that you will do the estate plans, not that you draft documents, but you actually refer them in. And then what we do is we have attorneys in every state in the United States that will build estate plans properly with suitability appropriate for each client. And then we have some great marketing assets to get the word out. So the estate plan consists of everything that you see here. It's a comprehensive plan. You actually get paid a very attractive referral fee for bringing the business in. And then you're able to dig in deep with that client. You're able to learn everything about the family, obviously, because you're part of navigating and helping them facilitate this estate plan. So if you're interested in something like this, just schedule time with me or get back with me. Find me on Workplace if you're with EXP, or just put something in the chat and say that you're interested. And no, it will not apply in Canada. But you know, there are Canadians that have lots of properties, and they also have family that live in the United States. So just because for them particularly it wouldn't work, it doesn't mean that they cannot refer someone who does live in the States, who actually has property here. But that is very common. People ask about how's Canada. Well, the estate laws are different in Canada. So, there is no program, although we are working at trying to find a solution for that. By the way, this is not an EXP endorsed anything. This is not, something that's a preferred provider. This is something that I've been using with other technology companies. That it's all done through technology, by the way. It's done via a screen share, and we sit one-on-one with the client. So that's one thing. The second thing that we offer is how to work the senior market. Obviously, estate planning is one way. It's a great way. But also, we know that older people need help. They need help and they need care, and they need care in their homes. And so I'm not sure I'm sharing that. Am I? Yeah, I am.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is an opportunity in which you can offer in-home care to someone for them paying as low as $95 a month. Now, if you know anything about in-home care, you'll know that it's $2,500 or more to have the quality care from home health care agencies and the aides that go with it. So we supply you with everything that you need here: marketing support, flyers, postcard creation, sales assistance, joint work, a very lucrative compensation plan, your own branded video, and much more. So that's really hot right now, these two items that I spoke about. So just keep that in mind. And now let's get off and running with the program for today, which is moving forward on the book. So let's do that right now. Okay, so here we are. We're going to now begin with the Home Equity Acceleration Plan. And let's move forward. We're going to start with Chapter 4. And so let's go through it. And the way this works, quite simply, is it's a show and tell, actually. I read, you watch. Lowell is the timekeeper, and so he'll keep time, and he'll ring a little bell and tell us when it's time to take a break, ask questions, explore some of what we've just been learning, and we'll go from here. So pardon me if I cough a little. Go ahead, Lowell.
So to tie this in, I mean, you have the estate planning and working with seniors because there's going to be a huge wealth transfer from the seniors. And to tie this into the whole realtor perspective, this is another way that you can help your clients once they've purchased a house. You can give them this direction or give them this opportunity, and that's another way to keep in contact with your clients as well.
Yeah, it's all about connection. It's all about deep connection, and it's also about adding value in places that no one else is really providing it.
Right.
So is it a fair statement to say that there are two types of people in this world? There are those who want to use the equity in their homes to build a tax favorable retirement nest egg, and there are those who want to pay off the debt on their home as soon as possible. Right? So those are the two types. What you will learn in this chapter is a unique program that will show you how to accomplish the lifelong dream of becoming mortgage debt-free and even totally debt-free. So let's start with HEAP. What is it? It's a dynamic new financial plan that enables you to pay off your home mortgage several years early without changing your normal spending habits. It is not a bi-weekly payment plan or some other extra payment plan or scheme. You are completely in control of the whole plan at all times. Once properly budgeted, HEAP is a simple plan that can be set up literally in a matter of days. HEAP is also a plan that has no downside and no risk. HEAP is a plan where many homeowners will pay off their mortgage 10 plus years early and save, on average, over $100,000 in mortgage interest. After the above statements, I imagine you are as ready and excited to read the following chapter as any chapter of any book you've ever read. While HEAP will not bring us world peace, it is a unique program that I think you'll really enjoy reading about and potentially implementing for yourself. So who does it work for? There are two prerequisites you must have in order to use HEAP to pay down your mortgage in the most expedient manner possible. You must first have equity in your home, and you'll understand why in the upcoming pages. And you'll also need to make more money than you spend. Now that's a big revelation, isn't it? I'm sorry, but I've not yet run across a mortgage or debt acceleration plan to help you pay down debt sooner if you don't earn more than you spend. I will also show you later in this chapter how you can use HEAP to your advantage, even if you happen to spend exactly what you earn every month. Now, why have you never heard of home equity acceleration plan? HEAP is not a new concept, but it is relatively unknown. Why it is unknown is a bit of a long story. But generally speaking, mortgage professionals are not taught this program in the educational programs available in the U.S. marketplace, and banks don't know anything about it. Traditionally speaking, mortgage professionals sell mortgages. They do not craft plans or help clients figure out ways to reduce the term of their mortgage. The same goes for banks. Since the vast majority of financial planners, insurance agents, CPAs, EAs, which are enrolled agents, accountants, and attorneys know very little about mortgages in general, let alone mortgage acceleration plans, homeowners are not receiving the information they need on this very unique and simple mortgage reduction plan. So ask yourself the following question. If you could pay off your mortgage substantially sooner than 30 years, assuming you have a 30-year mortgage, and you wouldn't have to alter your spending habits, would you? The question is more of a rhetorical question, as the obvious answer is yes. If one of your advisors asked you this question, I am sure you would follow up with a question like, can you show me how to do that? Now, how in the world can a homeowner pay off their mortgage substantially sooner and not change their spending habits? It can be done through the creative use of a home equity line of credit known as a HELOC. I'm sure everybody has heard that. It's somewhat familiar with it. Fundamentals that you need to know and learn in order to understand how and why HEAP works. 1, you can earn 0 on your average checking account balances. 2, interest is charged daily on your loans. And 3, home mortgage interest is paid in arrears. Both 2 and 3 were discussed in the prior chapter. Is it fair to say that most Americans keep a balance in their personal checking accounts? Now, I'm going to stop just for a second and just let everyone know when I say Americans, I'm reading it. But it's really anyone, right? Who are Americans? Anyway, absolutely. Most people do keep a balance in their personal checking account. Those who don't are not in a positive cash flow situation and should worry about simply making their mortgage payment rather than trying to find creative ways to pay it off early. Depending on the person, the monthly checking account balance is anywhere from $500 to as much as $5,000 plus. People use this money to pay their monthly bills, their gas, food, utilities, clothes, travel, entertainment, and yes, the mortgage expense. Now, what's the problem with a checking account? Well, most people earn no interest or very little interest today on money in a personal checking account. If you do earn interest on such accounts, it is very low and it is taxable every year. Therefore, you're lucky enough to earn 1 to 2% annually on your checking account balance and in the 30% income tax bracket. Again, state and federal tax, you would net 0.7 annually after taxes. That's, a horrible return to keep money stored in an account like that. This number is close enough to 0 that for purposes of this book, I will assume that all readers earn 0 on the balances they carry in their checking accounts. What does that mean and who cares? Everyone should care. And the analogy to illustrate why comes from the previous material on mortgage debt. Most readers do not like the notion that banks earn money daily as they charge borrowers interest on their mortgages. If that's true, then why don't we get upset that banks are not crediting us daily interest in a positive manner on money in our checking accounts, even if it is taxable? We should. And in the upcoming material, you will see firsthand how HEAP will help you use every available dollar every day to pay down mortgage debt, which is the best use of money in a checking account. Now let's talk about the home equity line of credit. Most people know what a home equity line of credit, or a HELOC, is, and many have had one at one point in their lives. A HELOC is similar to a revolving line of credit. You can go to a lender and use the equity in your home to receive a line of credit. Aside from a small annual fee, in some cases, if you are not accessing the line of credit, the beginning balance on the HELOC is zero. Since the monthly payment due on a HELOC is based on the outstanding loan balance, if the HELOC has a balance of zero, there will be no monthly payment due. After the HELOC is set up, you are literally given checks that can be used to access the equity line of the loan. In the traditional use of a HELOC, a borrower who is fixing up his or her house and doesn't have the cash to do so might go down to the local hardware store to buy building supplies and would use a check from the HELOC to pay for them. When checks are used, interest starts on the HELOC, and a monthly second mortgage payment is then due based on the amount of money borrowed. If the HELOC balance is $10,000, the monthly payment is calculated by using the current interest rate and the number of days in the period. If the interest rate is 8.25%, the payment for the 30-day month would be calculated as 10,000 times 0.0825, or 8.25%, divided by 365 days times 30 days in the current month, which would equal $67.81. This would be the interest due for that month. Some accounts have a 1% minimum, which would require a payment of $100, 10,000 times 1%. In this case, if $100 were paid, $32.19 would be applied to the principal, leaving a remaining balance of $99.76.81. The available credit offered by a lender through a HELOC may be drawn down when needed. Like a traditional home loan, the borrower must pay monthly payments and is required to pay off the balance over a specified period of time. And, like a mortgage, the interest accrues daily on the balance owed. When a payment is made, it is applied first to the interest due, and then any amount in excess of the interest is applied directly to the principal balance. Many of these accounts are set up with interest-only payment requirements with a limited draw period, followed by a repayment period. Typical HELOCs have a 10-year draw period, after which normal payments are calculated to pay off the balance over the remainder of the term, which can be up to 30 years. The interest rate for a HELOC is usually a variable adjustable rate. The measuring index, or variable portion of the loan, will often be the current prime interest rate. The margin, or the fixed portion, will be an amount that the lender adds to the rate in accordance with the risk factors associated with the loan. For example, a line of credit that leaves the borrower with little or no equity will have a higher margin than a line that leaves a large equity position. Generally speaking, a borrower with bad credit will have a higher margin charged to the loan, and someone with good credit can sometimes find a HELOC at the prime rate with no margin, and sometimes even less than the prime rate. If the prime rate is 8.25% and the margin is zero, the rate on a HELOC at prime plus zero would be 8.25%. The rate on a HELOC is usually higher than that of a conventional fixed-rate mortgage, which does not use prime as a basis for the lending rate. The following chart represents the prime rate from 2001 to 2005. Now, this book was written many years ago, but the principles are the same. It does fluctuate. It stayed at 3.25% from 2005 till 2011, when I published the first edition of this book, and where it still sits today. I need to acknowledge the author of the book, Rocky DeFrancesco, at this time, who's the publisher, the author of the book, the Home Equity Acceleration Plan, which we are reading today, and with permission, I'm able to read it and share the book. The way this works is you are here with us. We will send you this chapter and every chapter that you're here with us, so you can, again, reread that chapter on your own. Once we get through all the chapters, the entire book will be provided to you. There's no limit as to how long the rate can stay at one point or how often it can change. The prime rate is defined by the Wall Street Journal as the base rate on corporate loans posted by at least 75% of the nation's 30 largest banks. It is not the best rate offered by banks. So here's a look at the prime interest rate schedule and when it does change or when it did change, and you can see the fluctuation in the prime rate. Well, when you learn how HEAP works, you need to keep in mind that the amount of debt carried in a HELOC is minor, and the interest rate on the HELOC will not have a huge effect on the overall time it takes to pay down your total mortgage or other debt. When a HELOC is mentioned to most borrowers, they will usually think of it as a second mortgage. In fact, that is the way most of them are set up. However, some lenders now do offer first lien lines of credit. Generally speaking, so long as the HELOC loan balance does not exceed $100,000 and the borrower has no other home equity debt on the property, the interest on the loan is tax deductible, except as limited by Section 264A of the Internal Revenue Code. Before securing a typical HELOC, you need to know something very important. By securing a HELOC, you are using available equity of the house. When you draw funds from the HELOC, you reduce the equity in your home. It can even be reduced to zero if you access all of the equity. For example, if the first mortgage on your home is $80,000 and the HELOC balance is $20,000, there would be a $100,000 lien against your home. If the home is valued at $105,000, you would only have $5,000 in available equity. This is not necessarily a negative thing. However, if your goal is to list and sell the house within a year, it could potentially cost you money to sell the house because the house would be sold in a negative equity situation when you take into account realtor fees and other closing costs, obviously. In general, a HELOC is a type of mortgage that gives you the flexibility to use available equity when you need it and only pay for what you are using. Now, with a better understanding of how a HELOC works, it will now become easier to understand the concept of the Home Equity Acceleration Program. Would you like to take a break here, Lowell? If you have any question, Lowell, or you'd like to inject any experience in this area, anyone here that's with us?
I actually don't have experience in this area. It's interesting. So let me maybe I'll ask a question that might be helpful to others as well. So in the beginning, we talked about how interest is paid in arrears on a regular mortgage, and with a HELOC, it's not, correct?
Right. Yeah. You're actually paying. Well, it's not. Plus, you're going to be making that interest payment more regularly. So you're going to be satisfying your principal and your interest to repay that HELOC every time a payment is made. It's almost like.
Right.
It's almost like. Well, it is similar to private banking, where in your policy, you're using that money, leveraging that money and using it, right? Hopefully for investment or to earn more money or to pay off debt or whatever it is, but you're making a payment back to yourself on a very regular basis. And the same thing happens here. So while you're tapping into that $10,000, you're making payments back to that account and refueling that HELOC. So that's why that interest that he said is not really going to amount to a lot, because you're going to be handling it on a very regular basis. That's the idea behind using a HELOC in this manner, right?
That makes sense.
You don't want to take the HELOC for $10,000, spend it on something, and then find yourself a year later in arrears because you didn't make any payments back to it, right? That's why, as you'll see here, the HELOC will be funded with something.
Okay.
So let's look at
Early said he had to go.
Okay, didn't know. No problem.
Yeah.
Bye, Early. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for being with us.
So
we'll continue.
Yeah, HEAP works in conjunction with a HELOC. As stated earlier, HEAP will show you how to use every available dollar every day to pay down mortgage debt. Now, how? Through the use of a HELOC that you will ultimately use as your checking account. First, you set up a HELOC utilizing the equity in your home. The equity, the HELOC is usually a second lien, as we said, on your personal residence. For the first example, I will assume that the line of credit you can access is $25,000. The repayment terms are interest only, and the rate is variable tied to prime. Although it is not a realistic assumption, we will assume that prime remains at 8.25% for the term. Prime will go up or down over time. I only assume this to make the concept easier to understand. As noted in the previous chart, the prime rate can fluctuate several times per year. In the past several years, it has been as low as 3.5 and as high as 8.5%. Now, I am going to pretend the example homeowner is in several different situations so you can see firsthand how HEAP can work to save you tens of thousands to more than $100,000 in mortgage interest over the life of the loan. Now, the first example, I'm going to assume that you have a middle class income. You are very serious about paying down your mortgage, and you are being frugal to pay it down as quickly as possible. I'm going to assume that you just bought a new home, and therefore you are implementing HEAP with a new 30-year mortgage. Now you have the following income and expenses. Monthly income after taxes of $5,000. You have a first mortgage balance of $200,000, which is a 30-year mortgage. You have a first payment due date of February 1st, a monthly mortgage payment at 6.25%, and that equals $1,231.43. Isn't it funny Lowell, that the interest rate is 6.25%? This book was written, I don't know, 10 to 15 years ago. Anyway, we see how that cycle goes up and down, right? HELOC
Right back
interest
around that
rate,
point.
yeah. HELOC interest rate, 8.25%. All other monthly bills, credit cards, utilities, etc., is $1,650. Miscellaneous monthly expenditures, dinners, movies, fuel, etc., $800. So the total monthly family outlay is $3681.43. For this example, I'm going to assume you will not consolidate any other bills into the HELOC, like credit card debt, etc. Now, once you are fully educated on this plan, you will most likely want to consolidate other debt using the HELOC. Why? Because interest payments on credit card charges are not deductible. When set up correctly, interest payments on a HELOC are. That's huge. Now, once the HELOC is opened, a comfortable amount of emergency cash is determined. This is the amount of money that you should have available at all times in the line of credit. This amount will then be available to use in case of an emergency. Therefore, with this example, I'll assume you should have $15,000 available at all times in the HELOC in case of an emergency. This amount was determined by taking 3 months of your salary. There is no standard amount that is required as a reserve. You will need to determine for yourself what an acceptable reserve amount is, considering your own situation. The reserve is really there to pay your bills should you become disabled, lose your job, or have an unexpected expense, like a major health expense for a short period of time. Now, I'm going to add, in addition to becoming disabled, losing your job, or an unexpected expense, I'm going to add the slow periods where you're between commission income, right? I mean, for those that are not on W-2 income or salary, it's important to have a fund, an account available to tap into. That's why what was said earlier was very important, which was live below your means and spend less than you earn. Having said all that, it is usually recommended that you reserve 3 times your after-tax income. In this example, that is $15,000. If I assume that you are designating $15,000 of the $25,000 in HELOC as a cushion available for emergencies, this will leave you with $10,000 at your disposal from a HELOC to be used to pay down mortgage debt with HEAP. So I'll stop there for a second, because I think what this is saying is to bulk up on that HELOC with $25,000 of home equity or line of credit, but assuming $15,000 of that, keeping available for an emergency. Am I reading that right?
That's what it sounds like to me. So you're getting a HELOC for 25, but you're only going to use 10.
Correct, for these purposes. So
Right.
using a HELOC to pay down the primary mortgage debt. Now, when you access the HELOC, instead of spending borrowed funds to fix up the house, take a vacation, or otherwise use the money for miscellaneous expenses, you will use the HELOC money to pay down the debt on the primary mortgage. In this example, you will draw $10,000 from the HELOC and pay it directly towards the first mortgage. This is going back to what we said earlier, Lowell, that paying it off in a lump sum or putting lump sums in is the most efficient manner to do this.
Right.
Remember, HEAP is designed to help you pay off your primary mortgage several years early, and the money from the HELOC will be used to accomplish that goal. By paying $10,000 down on the first mortgage, you will obviously reduce the principal of the first mortgage and the interest that would have been paid on the loan over the long term, and shorten the length of your primary mortgage. Having made this payment on your first mortgage, you now will have to pay at least the minimum payment on the new $10,000 HELOC. The key, as you will see with HEAP, is how quickly a client can pay down the $10,000 HELOC. Remember, once HEAP is budgeted correctly, you will not have to change your spending habits, which is why this is such a useful program. The total debt on the home is still the same as the day the HELOC is accessed. That's $190,000 that's left on the primary mortgage and $10,000 from the HELOC that was applied to pay down the first mortgage. So there's really no games being played. Nothing has really happened. What did happen? All we did was shift some asset size from one column to another, or one account to the other. We didn't really put ourselves in any further debt in any way necessarily, did we?
Right. So we have a $25,000 HELOC that we have access to is what's going on, and we're actually using 10,000 of it to pay down the principal balance. So we have not used that other 15,000. It's still unaccessed credit line, basically.
Correct. And we're not paying anything
Okay.
for that, for access. It's just a dormant line of credit.
Right. Okay.
And so many people fall into this category of failure to have any access to funds, slush fund or security fund, or access to a pool of money. And when hard times come, it becomes a problem, because the time to qualify for these things is when you're healthy, right? When you
Right.
have income. And that's the trapping behind having money sitting, in an equity position inside your home. It's locked into, bricks. It's locked into the four
Right.
walls. And the only way to access your money is to chop away or remove some bricks or break down that wall so you can get access to it. And doing it that way, you need to abide by the lender's conditions and their rules. So there is something to be said for planning in advance for those rainy days, let alone the opportunity to pay off your mortgage at a very accelerated rate and put all of that interest back in your pocket.
Right.
So I think I'm going to take, stop here, only because I have a hard close at 1 anyway. My time.
Okay.
And we'll resume this next week with how HEAP works to use every available dollar every day to pay down the mortgage debt. And that's kind of where the secret lies, is using the available dollar every day. And if you remember what we talked about, what we learned last week, was the quicker we could pay that interest up, or pay that interest payment more rapidly and more regularly, the faster the acceleration in reducing that mortgage balance will occur. But the difficulty is you can't send checks into the bank every day, right? You can't do
Right.
that, right? So we need to find another way or another vehicle that will allow us to do that. And this is what we're going to learn next week.
Sounds good. I'm really interested in the upcoming part of this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little labor intensive here in the beginning, but obviously we're learning slowly a few key points, walkaways, right? That this will not work for someone who's spending more than they make. So stay away
Right.
from that, right? So that's a budget issue. And they need to really sit down and really have a good talk with themselves, right?
Right. And I think that's probably the biggest hurdle for most people
It
is that budget issue is getting yourself to where, I mean, because credit is so readily available these days and easy to obtain. And, and if I can fit another $25 payment into my monthly budget, then I can afford this kind of mentality. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to have that conversation and to change the disciplines that people have acquired about spending and about budgeting.
Yeah, and that's the difficult part. And most people don't want their hands held, especially, look, younger people don't know the difference, and older people have been used to doing what they've been doing for 40 years or so, right? So
Right.
who are we to step in and think that we could teach someone new tricks, right? And
Right.
it is a very difficult, look, this is all about de-brainwashing people, right? From doing things that
Right.
they've ordinarily been doing. Hi, Cheryl. Welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, I
Hey, listen, better late than never. Hey,
believe that. Yeah, I looked at that thing and I was like, oh my goodness.
are you okay over there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we started about an hour ago, but that's okay.
Oh, I looked, and it's the only Zoom I wanted to be at today. So I was
Yeah.
like, I'm missing.
Yeah. So I'll send you the recording so you'll hear
Oh,
it.
goodness, thank you.
But I mean, we're talking about, and again, it's like timing is everything, right? In people's lives. They're not going to take action until something slams them in the face. And then it's like, oh, I really need to pay attention to this. You know, God
Right.
bless the person that really could step out of that zone and say, I want to change my life. I want to learn something new. And as my cap says, GOAT, well, you could think you know what it means, but it really means go out and try, is what it means. Go out and try, right? Get the information, get the knowledge, and actually do something with it. Apply it, test it, right? Do something out of the ordinary, something that's a little bit awkward or a little bit inconvenient. But that's the difference that helps us grow.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's where growth occurs. When we do the same thing over and over and we get used to it and it's second nature and we just get stuck in a rut and we get
Right.
stuck in wake up in the morning, go to work, go home, have dinner, go to bed, all Monday through Friday, and then live for the weekends and pay the bills at the end of the month. And that's life. That turns into life. And if
Yeah.
you don't do something different, nothing's going to change.
That's right. That's right. So the using a HELOC in this case is something that we're going to dive into further. Is actually, now that we got all the knowledge out of the way about what a mortgage is, how a mortgage operates, how that works technically, how interest is calculated, how payments are made to pay last month's interest, and the key to it is chopping that interest down, paying that interest, right? Or applying more money toward the principal. And we talked about the four different ways, whether it's pay a lump sum, whether it's pay biweekly, whether it's pay using a roundup method, right, on a mortgage payment, or a combination of all three.
Right.
All of those, any of those is better than doing nothing. So if you could shave off 7 years from a 30-year mortgage, it's, $50,000, $70,000 you've saved. Well, it's better than putting it in the bank's pocket. And if you've saved it from being spent, you actually have made that money, right? You've actually put it in your bank, right? So there's something to be said about trying to shave off the interest and all of that the bank is getting. And that's what we're trying to do here, which all coincides with becoming your own bank, right? I had a conversation with a client this morning. He opened up a banking plan. I have about 5 minutes left here. And he funded it with $100,000. And now the first year and then every year for the next 5 years, he's putting $20,000 in it. Now he's an ex-Keller Williams,
Agent.
no, broker. What do they
Broker?
call him? A managing principal, managing
Oh, okay. Mhm.
partner, right? So he retired. And so he's got the money. He built a big garage. He lives in Claremont, Florida, big farmland, big land area. So he built a garage using his bank's money and paying himself back as a borrower to a lender, and he's a lender, so he's capturing a spread and not, all of that great stuff. But he told me this morning, so I became a bank, a real bank, and I lent somebody money. I said, congratulations, congratulations. He goes, yeah, I did it. Because I've been trying to teach people how to do that, right? So he did it.
Right.
So I said, well, did you use your bank's money? Did you? He goes, no, I didn't. I said, why? You have the money that's what it's there for. He said, well, I have a savings account that had the money in it. Somebody needed $5,000. And I said, okay, I'll lend it to you and charge you an interest rate. And he said, fine, blah, blah, blah. But because I don't really need the money in my savings account and it was only earning 1%, I figured it was not a big deal. I just took the money from my savings account and I lent it out. And, so I said, where are you going to put the interest that you're getting back? I think he's charging them 7% or something like that. He says, well, I don't know. I'll put it back in my savings account. I said, no, put it in your bank. Just put it in your policy. Just do that.
Yep.
But you could have and should have used the policy money, your bank policy money, to lend the 5,000 from there, because the corpus or the volume that you have in that bank, that amount, that asset, would not lose its position for purposes of crediting with guaranteed interest and a dividend to be applied. So it's important to remember to do that. But everybody has their own way, right? And I was fine with it. I didn't come down on him. I said, I'm glad you did it. Now you're a bank. And that's what people
Yeah. First step.
People have money. Sometimes they don't know what to do with it. And they're afraid to do this or they're afraid to do that. And it's probably because they've made mistakes in the past. We all have. I still do. And, so you just have to be at peace with the decisions you make, right? You just have to be at peace with it and just go with it. And So what if you make a mistake, right? That's why we're here. We're here to talk about the mistakes we make.
We got a few hours for that. I mean,
Yeah, no, I know.
plenty to talk about there.
So anyway, I want to say thank you. I'm going to stop recording for a second here and then go offline for a minute. So let's do that.